Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. I'm joined this week by Alex Heublein of NETSURIT. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, how are you? Thanks for having me.
It is good. It is a Monday as we're recording this episode. So, the things that go along with that. But, that being said, you brought a topic to the table that I think is worthy of an episode, as most who listen will agree, the conversation around AI. And you said it, I think, quite perfectly before we started the show, is that AI is here and we have one of two choices, ignore it, or choose to not use it, or work towards a path that says use it and use it responsibly. I guess maybe start with sharing with our listeners sort of your overarching viewpoint on this, because I think to give sort of the backstory with regards to AI, it's not like it's something new. In fact, we could argue that it has been here pretty much since the beginning of the days of things like IoT with your Alexas and Google Home automation type stuff. They've existed, maybe not at the level of generative AI that we see today, but the only reason really that I think we talk about it today is because the cost to deliver it to the user experience has now become affordable, to become almost a commonplace as a tool. So I'm curious on your thoughts from the AI perspective. What led you down this path that I think you call, you actually had a name for it, for what you offer, and I'm drawing a blank on what it was, so I'll let you share that with the audience.
Well, Chris, AI is a really fascinating topic, right? And to your point, it's actually been around for a good 40-something years. A lot of people don't realize it, but in some form or fashion, I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, I've been doing this for about 35 years. And they're like, 35 years? Are you kidding me?
Right.
So, but 35 years ago, it couldn't do a whole lot. And I think you're spot on when you say that, this stuff has come to the forefront really in the last couple of years. And I think part of it is due to the fact that the capabilities have just expanded dramatically, particularly in the last 12 months, right? 12 months ago, we had large language models that could, they could reason like my son. My son's just finishing up second grade. He's a pretty smart kid, but, his cognitive abilities at this point are still limited, right? So he can do some basic things. He can do some intelligent things, but, not somebody you want making business decisions or automating your business processes for you. And just in a 12-month period, we've gone from that level of intelligence to, almost PhD level expertise. And more importantly, we've seen this rise of reasoning skills. Just in the last, let's call it 6 or 7 months, this idea that we can take large language models and instead of them spitting out whatever the first thing that comes into their head is, they actually reason through these things. It's called chain of thought reasoning. And that has opened up a tremendous set of capabilities for the world and for the business community in general. We predominantly serve small and medium businesses. We're an MSP. We focus on companies. Really, our sweet spot is probably 20 to, let's say, 200 or 250 user type of companies. But we also offer a service called NETSURIT Innovate. And the neat thing about this is really all about bringing AI and automation technologies down market into the small and medium business world. And the fascinating part of it is that we're able to do things now that we just couldn't afford to do in that market a couple of years ago, right? You would have had to have an army of programmers. You're paying these guys a ton of money because they were very, very expensive a couple of years ago. Now we're actually able to deliver very impactful, high return on investment business applications and use cases with AI for a fraction of the price that we could deliver this stuff even 18 months ago. And so that's opened up a whole new world for us in terms of what we're able to deliver to our customers, puts us in a much more strategic mindset with them, because now it's not just, hey, can you come take care of my IT? Can you come take care of my systems and my networks and all that good stuff? but now can you help me solve some of my business problems? So that's been a real sea change for us. We're seeing just tremendous demand for this very underserved market that we've seen in the past.
And I would think that you're seeing, I know I have seen where you're almost as a consumer of AI tools, which whether we want to be or not, we all are, right? You can't open up Excel and not have it start hallucinating how it's got better ideas around designing slides than you do. And you know how Copilot fits into that and some of the other AI tools. What was interesting is I was reading an article the other day that was talking about where some of the concerns that people have around how AI can be used for both good and bad, and then how AI itself can be, you know, flawed. And it was showing that with the top 10 LLMs, it was pointing out their ability to basically provide you with false information or hallucinate answers back to you. And what was interesting is like the top two AI, Gemini, and I don't remember what the other one was that was just first, second place. They were at like 1.2 to 1.5% probability that they're going to hallucinate or give you false information as an answer. And in that top 10, like worst case was like around a 3%. So we're
Yep.
talking about LLMs that have in the last year, you've heard a lot of things like, I don't use it because you can't trust what it gives back. You know, there's all these concerns around privacy and how your data might get manipulated. And it's like, well, yeah, you know, don't upload, you know, your copyrighted whatever so that someone else using LLM all of a sudden is getting that information, intentional or not. But it was,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's helping us see that a lot of the information that we've been fed around the use cases or the value of generative AI or AI in general is kind of being shaped by more of a media spin or the hypotheticals that are, you know, for those that are using the free versions of any AI tool, you should have a level of skepticism. I think to where you were going with this is like when you get into investing in the usage of paid AI models, the tools that are, you know, being put together for purposes like research and automation and helping to pull large volumes of information together and give you the bits and pieces that you need to make decisions faster. It goes back to what you said about your son. We need tools like this in an information age where we can barely keep up with our email, let alone
Yeah,
build
right.
out, you know, the things that we need to do. So how do you overcome? I guess this has been the one I always struggle with. How do you overcome or put them on a path around, you know, the AI risk, the policy? And I just had one, you know, it was interesting. It was in the policy. It says the user is fully responsible for understanding the capability and the limitations of the AI tool that they're using. Like,
Yeah, right. Good luck.
point me to that person.
Yeah, exactly right. That's a huge. And you're bringing up a really good point, though, right? Because if you think about hallucinations, they're definitely a problem. And I don't know, Chris, that we're ever going to get rid of them. I don't know that this is one of those things we'll ever solve where you get 100% accuracy with large language models, at least. So there's a couple of ways to think about this, right? One of them is that large language models are non-deterministic, which means that if I give them the same exact input, I may get a different output, right? Just depending on the time of day I
Right,
do
every
it or
single
whatever,
time.
right? Yeah, every
Yeah,
single time, right? I might get a slightly different answer. But you know what? Guess what else is non-deterministic? Humans. Right?
humans. Yeah.
We're super non-deterministic, right? So this idea that people will run around and say, well, you know, this thing hallucinates 2% of the time. Humans hallucinate 2% of the time, honestly.
At least
Um, at least, right? So
on a
the
good day.
question you have
Yeah.
to ask yourself is, yeah, and on a good day, an average human is going to hallucinate more than 2% or 3% or whatever at the time, right? So one of the things we found is the first thing we tell people, and the first thing we do with them is you've got to pick the right use cases. If you need a 100% correct answer where a human isn't going to be in the loop to review the whatever the large language model comes back with, don't use it. Okay, it's that's not a great use case for AI, at least not at this point in time. Now,
Right.
so we direct people, and when we work with our customers, we try to we spend a lot of time in use case selection, right? What are the business problems you've got? And then which ones can we solve with AI? We don't sit there and just say, oh, you've got this business problem, perfect, we'll try to solve it with AI. So we've got at least
Right.
a pretty good understanding of what makes a good AI use case and what makes a bad AI use case. And so what makes a bad AI use case? One is you need 100% accuracy. Two is you need complete determinism. You're going to get the same exact answer if you put the same exact input in. A third bad characteristic is if you have a process or you're doing something with a large language model where there's no human in the loop, right? There's no one to go look at the results. There's no
Right.
human oversight. That's a recipe for disaster, quite candidly. So we try to understand, like you said before, you've got to understand the limitations of what these things could do. Because we do demos and people think these things are magic, right? We'll go into a big conference room of people or a company, and we'll start demoing this stuff. And honestly, man, I mean, I've been in these meetings where I might as well just like sawed a woman in half right in the middle of a conference room. They would have been no more surprised had I done that than some of
Right.
the things we showed them you could do with AI, right? So picking those use cases is really important. Making sure there's human in the loop, uh, also very important. And then the third piece is, you have to design the solutions well. So, for instance, using chain of thought models can reduce the number of hallucinations because this thing's actually thinking. It's not just spitting back whatever comes into its head. So, if you
Right.
use a model like GPT-4o from OpenAI or any of their non reasoning models,
Sure.
you tend to get a fair number of hallucinations. When you use the chain of thought models, these things are going through and thinking, right? They're going through a process where they get some information and then they think about it like, is this right? Does this make sense? And so the way we write these solutions, the way we develop them is to also go back and have these things check themselves. Like, here's the output. Now go back and look at this and make sure it makes sense. So that there are plenty of ways you can do it. The other thing we find is really important is being very verbose in your prompts. And what's fascinating is if you go look at more senior level people in an organization, the interesting thing is they've all been trained how to use Google. We all have, right? You type in these very terse statements and Google goes and searches for things, right? You don't type in like 3 or 4 sentences into Google typically. So
Right.
most IT knowledge worker type people have been trained to think that way. They've been trained to deliver input to these systems in a very terse, very compact format. What's interesting though is if
Yeah.
you give large language models to lower level people, people that aren't information workers, people that aren't IT people, or sort of what you consider sort of white collar workers, if you will, you give it to these lower level people and they talk to it like it's a human. So their prompts are much, much more verbose. And it turns out the more context you can give a large language model, the better the results, right? So if
Right.
I'm very verbose, if I give it a lot of context, which you get out of that verbosity typically, you tend to get fewer hallucinations and better results because the large language model understands the context of what you're asking it, not just the question, but why am I asking this question? What results do I expect out of this question I'm going to ask you, this prompt I'm going to give you? So there's lots of techniques like that you can use to minimize the hallucinations, but at the same time, it's very much worth remembering that large language models in general, the best in class large language models, hallucinate less frequently than humans do. So if you've got a human doing this process right now, guess what? You're probably not going to be any the worse for wear if you augment that human with a large language model with artificial
Well,
intelligence.
it gets into, like, you've seen the LinkedIn and Facebook plaguing the internet with the pictures of the action figure or the doll that is now packaged that has their sort of image baked into it, like
Yeah, yeah,
the IT guy or the laptop. I found that really interesting because most people that generated those for themselves, they did not do that without using somebody else's instructions, right? Like, so the
yeah,
to your verbose comment, like, even those who are the best at understanding how to used a lot of context and provide a lot of information, probably still wouldn't have gotten the results that equated to the action figure that genuinely looks like an action figure and has their likeness and.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where you're going, I think, is that the premise or the use case is that's not what they're really for. Like, you shouldn't have to create a formula to generate something that isn't making things. It's not improving your efficiency. It's not improving your productivity. So I did some research on this not too long ago, and the research was around the way in which the average employee of any organization is using the AI tools. And they found that I think it was like around 80% were using AI for basically mischievous or non-work related activities.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
it wasn't saying malicious, right? But like these were like, hey, I wonder if I can get it to do fill in the blank. And we've seen where how do you get that shift that says, no, we're not saying you can't use AI, but we are monitoring your usage of AI. And if you're not using it appropriately, then there's going to be repercussions versus I can see tons of scenarios. Like I know I use it in my day to day when I'm working on things like, okay, I have to give a presentation on fill in the blank. And I have like 10 bullet points that I've come up with as sort of key talking points for the presentation. Well, I only have 45 minutes. If I have 10 talking points, this is going to be more than a 45-minute presentation. So
Exactly.
asking the prompt, hey, give me the from this list of 10, give me the 5 that you think are most important that I should deliver on. And ironically, it doesn't just give you that answer of like, here's the 5. It gives you here's the 5, and it gives explanations for each one as to why it gave you those. I think that's where the value today, if we were just thinking about common productivity values, is where it's at, right? Like I could have spent days researching, trying to figure out, interviewing, MSPs and asking them like, which one of these is most important to you? And 4 days later, I would still have maybe narrowed it down to 7, right? Like it still would
Yeah.
be hard to get to the 5. So do you think that obviously AI is constantly evolving, and we're going to get to a place where they will do a lot more. But I think that the usage for you and me taking advantage of AI tools is just a small fraction of the value that AI plays in the role today on a larger scale.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's sort of two ways we think about it, Chris. One way is you can look at AI tools as personal productivity enhancers, right? So what you just said, take these 7 bullet points and distill it down to the 5 most important ones, or this PDF document, this legal document, and show me any red flags that might exist in this thing, right? Show me the gotchas in this contract I'm about to sign, or summarize the indemnification section, or whatever, right?
Should I
So
sign this?
what I use it for a lot. Sorry.
Just should I sign this, right? Like yes or no?
No, exactly. No, you got it right. Should I sign this thing? What red flags, or what point should I try to negotiate here?
Yeah.
So that's a great use case for AI. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. I'm just like, look, I want a reasonably competent person who understands basic law to go through and read all the legalese, and it's great at doing that. Turn this into plain English for me so I understand the contract I'm signing, and then give me some advice on some things I should work out, right? So that's an example of a personal productivity enhancer. Or here's another PDF. I don't have time to read this 50-page document. Give me the quick summary, right? Give me the 1, 2, 3-page summary of this thing so I don't have to read the whole thing. And if I want to go in and read it, I can go in and read it after the fact, but it's almost the Cliff's Notes version of that document, right? Or you can get into much more complex use cases there as well, right? Like, so one of the things that we do, and this is really cool, we like when you're doing sales prospecting. I've got a prospect. I don't know a whole lot about this company. Maybe they came to my website and filled a form out, but I still don't know what these guys do. I don't know a whole lot about them. So one of the things we'll do is we'll use either Gemini or OpenAI's deep research tool. And I don't know if you've had a chance to play with this thing, but this thing goes out and it does hours worth of research on a company or a topic or whatever in 8 to 10 minutes. So it'll come back, it'll build you a nice 20-page, 30-page report that says, man, here's everything I could find on this company or this particular topic out there. And then what we do is we take that and we feed it into an AI-based presentation generation tool. So it generates PowerPoint decks or Google presentation decks, right? Say, hey, take all this data. I literally just take it from deep research. I copy it in, just paste it in. So give me 20 slides on this, right? I don't have time to read this 30, 40-page document, but I got time to peruse through 20 slides, right? So you just think about the productivity enhancement. A salesperson could have spent 2 or 3 hours doing all this research. I guarantee you they wouldn't have done the research as thoroughly as deep research did. And now I've got a nice slide deck that I can glance through and become familiar with the company I'm about to call on or the company I'm about to cold call or email or whatever, right? So those are all good personal productivity enhancers for AI. Then you look at sort of the institutional or departmental or company level initiatives, right? So how do I take processes that are cumbersome, repetitive, annoying, just those things that you do in your life that are just, you just feel like, God, this is a waste of time. But I still need a human to do it. I still need that level of human intelligence to do this because it's too hard for me to go write a bunch of computer code to do it. Those are great use cases for AI, right? So I'm not trying to eliminate the person. I'm just trying to take the things off their plate that they hate doing. In fact, that's one of the first things I do when I go in.
We used to do that with macros, right? Back in the day.
Exactly. You got it. Right? So this is like macros on steroids.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. And that area is really really just taking off right now. But the trick is I'm going to reduce the amount of work. I'm not going to eliminate all the work. We're still not there yet for a lot of these tasks. But if I can get rid of 90% of the labor and have the human just go in and spend 10% of the time they would have normally taken to review the results for accuracy, to see if there's any weird anomalies or weird hallucinations in there, wow, I've just made that person 10 times more productive. All right. Or I've taken an executive and I've made them 20% more productive. And you start thinking about the cumulative effects of this on business, and it's absolutely enormous. And so one of the other pieces is process automation, right?
Yeah.
How do I take business processes that today are too complex to hand off to a machine, or traditionally have been too complex to hand off to a machine, because I would have had to employ an army of programmers to write all the code and deal with all the weird corner cases. If I can automate those processes, hand them off to a machine intelligence and artificial intelligence to do the vast majority of it, and then again have a human review it before it gets finalized, I've just taken a massive amount of work off the plates of people. So that's really kind of what we focus on. We focus on the personal productivity aspects of it, but also that sort of departmental or company or organizational level productivity aspects of it as well.
I feel like on the productivity side of taking the complex processes, it reminds me of, back in the day, writing code, and you can write code to do specifically what you want the program to do. But I think that even the best programmers can't write for the exceptions when they first start building the program. And I think that's kind of one of those things where it's like, you start building what you want it to do, and you put that into an AI model and say, but then help me account for all of the exceptions that it can think of. And it might only come up with one. That's one more than I probably came up with. It also might come up with 25 or 30, and you're like, oh, 5 of those, we need to reconsider how we're writing this application altogether, because those exceptions can cause catastrophic events that we don't want our program to do.
No, exactly. And it's funny you say that, because I spent 25 years of my life as a professional software engineer. And I got out of it because it's not that I didn't like building applications. It's not that I didn't like building solutions. I hated writing exception handlers for all the dumb things people could do, right? Because that's actually more effort than writing the program in a lot of cases.
That was my job, the latter part.
Yeah, it's okay. So you've been through this, right? And it's maddening, right? Coming up with all the dumb things that somebody might do. So yes, you can use AI to kind of come up with, hey, what would a dumb human do with this thing? What crazy things might happen? But the really neat part is that the large language models can handle those exceptions gracefully.
Right.
right? They've got enough intelligence to say, hey, this isn't right. This was not in the happy path here of our use case. But I'm smart enough to know that, hey, that's not a valid request, or I can't actually do that, right? So the ability for these things to gracefully handle exceptions, to gracefully figure out, I haven't been told what to do here, but I'm smart enough to
Sure.
figure out what the probable answer to this is. That's massive. It just changes the game when it comes to developing applications and developing software. Um, so you don't have to be that explicit, right? That's the hard part about programming. And I used to tell people, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm a software engineer. And I'm like, what's that like? I'm like, well, it's like telling a 5-year-old how to do something exactly how you want them to do it. Right? You have to be very, very, very explicit with it.
Right.
But
And
now
if
we've
this
got the
happens, then
ability.
this.
Exactly. And then if this other thing happens, well, okay, go do this. Like that turns into actually most of what programming is. It's not sort of developing the app the way people should use it. It's what do we do if they use it the wrong way, or ways that we didn't anticipate for it to be used. So large language models can help a lot with that graceful exception handling
It's
throughout the
the argument
process.
of security. The security by default, secure by design, is really brilliant in concept, but becomes very difficult in reality because asking me to write something for a security protocol that I don't know about, or the way in which it might be exploited hasn't been done yet, then we're chasing something that's invisible and hard to describe. But with the tools that we have today, I think to your point, we no longer can really use that excuse because we can say, hey, because we applied these resources against the application that we're building, we can say that we at least did with intentionality, build as best we could based on what we know and with the help of these resources so that we're not committing the mistakes of what our predecessors have done, which those LLMs have captured.
No, you got it. You got it. And again, it's a lot of it is about picking the right use cases. Like a lot of people say to me, "Wow, we're going to have self-driving cars soon." In fact, we already do. And I tell them, "Yeah, look, I'll get into a self-driving car on a really nice sunny day, with no weather, on a nice
Sure.
road, or whatever." Right? I'm not getting into a self-driving car in a torrential rainstorm at night where the power's out and the streetlights are off. That's not going to happen. Right? Like,
Right.
I'm not going to. I don't trust the
Navigating
technology
mountainous
that way.
terrain.
Yeah, navigating, yeah, a twisty road in the mountains where there's ice and snow and rain and sleet. No, not a chance that I'm going to get in one of those things at that
Well,
point,
even if
right?
your car is
So,
not the quote true self-driving car, I mean, I have a car that like literally when you have cruise control on, you can take your hands off
yep.
the wheel and it will follow the parameters, gracefully turning corners. But heaven forbid those lines disappear on that road and it starts to hallucinate and it starts to jerk and twitch and you don't
Yeah.
know what it's going to do next. And you've got both hands on the wheel and it's like, I want to go left. And you're like, I don't want to go left.
No, exactly. Well, and people say, well, they're 99.9%, perfect. And I'm like, that means that one out of every 1,000 times you get in your car, it's probably going to do something dumb and wreck and potentially kill you. Like, who's going to take the 1 in 1,000 you might die chance on a
Well,
self-driving car? So,
we recognize hallucinations in that case, whereas the AI is giving you a hallucination and it doesn't know that it's hallucinating.
well, not only that, it thinks it's right. Like it's
That's
dead
right.
certain that it's correct, right? Because a lot of times they'll hallucinate. You'll be like, wow, wait a minute, man, that's completely wrong. And they're like, nope, nope, it's totally right.
Yeah,
So
they'll
so
explain
not
the
only do they
hallucination.
no, exactly, right? And so you just have to be careful, right? And so what we recommend to people is look, don't try to do this on your own. Okay.
No.
Like it's still a nascent enough technology to where you really do need experts, because then you have to look at the dark side of AI. Right? We've talked about hallucinations, we've talked about some of the things you have to account for. But then you start looking at the dark side of AI, which is okay, great. I'm giving this thing access to a bunch of very, very sensitive information in my business. How do I secure it? How do I make sure that this data doesn't leave my four walls? How do I make sure that all of these things happen?
Sure.
And so I think that's a very, very big piece to this. When you start to think about securing it, making sure that it's private, making sure that only the people that need access to information have access to that information, right? Making sure that only people that have rights to specific information, because you can turn a large language model loose and train it on your company data.
Right.
You can fine tune it. You can give it access using a protocol called RAG, where it's retrieval augmented generation. It'll use what it knows, but then it'll go off and retrieve information from your SharePoint site or your file
Right.
shares or whatever document repository you have. So you do have to be a bit careful there in terms of controlling access, making sure that information isn't leaking to the outside world. So you've got all that set of things, but then you also have a tremendous challenge with when you start to look at cybersecurity in general, right? So one of the interesting things we've seen with the dark side of AI is that the cyber criminals have gotten hold of these things, right? Which is really
Oh,
interesting.
yeah.
So the cyber criminals now, what we've seen over the last year or so, we've seen more attacks on small and medium businesses, more ransomware attacks, et cetera, than we've ever seen before. And part of the reason is they're using these large language models to come down market, right? So now, if you think about a hacking business, you think about cybercrime, it's a business to these guys. Now, I hate to even talk about criminals like business people, but they look at what's my cost of hacking these, and how can I bring that cost down? So I can use AI to bring down the cost of going after small and medium businesses, which now makes them a very attractive target for me out in the world. So we also have to take care of that. So you need to have a partner that not only understands AI but also understands the cybersecurity implications of this to make sure that you're okay, both from a using AI standpoint, but also defending against some of the AI based attacks that are out there today.
Yeah, I mean, along with what you just described, as far as having a partner that's securing the environment, putting the bumpers into the parameters, and so they can't go outside the ecosystem. But I think that the last part is the human education piece is so critical. Like, it's one thing to put all the security in place and say, use the chat prompt however you see fit. Just don't upload any sensitive information. Okay, got it. Well, doesn't this AI already have access to all of our sensitive information anyways? Well, yes, it does. So let me rephrase that. Don't ask questions to retrieve sensitive information either, because just because you can ask for it doesn't mean you should have asked access. Just because you can ask doesn't mean you should.
Yes. No, exactly. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it, right? Like a lot of people think that if I upload this information to ChatGPT, then all of a sudden, immediately it's accessible to the rest of the world. There's some very simple settings you could use, at least on the paid plans, to say, hey, turn that off. Don't use this information that I'm uploading in future training data, right? Because the reason they collect all that information is to do another training run. Now, these training runs don't happen overnight, right? They only happen every few months. So worst case scenario, your data might get exposed a few months from now, potentially. But it's not getting exposed overnight, right? And there's some very easy settings you can use to turn that off. And then also, you can access large language models via the sort of chatbot prompt, right? You can talk to them, you can type in whatever you want, but you can also access these via application programming interfaces. And they don't store that data that you're using, at least OpenAI and guys like that, Anthropic, et cetera. They don't store the information that you pass across via the API. Right. And so we typically will use the API for these sort of institutional or organizational level situations. Right. So that is secure as long as you believe them. Right.
Right. No, I think
that's
a great approach. We are out of time. Alex, if someone was looking to ask you more questions about your approach through Innovate, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, a couple ways. One is you can email me at alexh@netsurit.com. That's netsurit.com. Or you can just go to our website, which is just netsurit.com. We'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, for those of you listening, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks, and have a great week.